To the Pistons Talk Podcast. You already know me, Anthony. Lance isn't here. He decided to go up north to, I want to say Drummond Island. I'm probably getting it wrong, but he's up north, just having a vacation. So shout out to him. But we do have a very special guest for you today. You probably have seen some of his tweets. I would probably say he's the most positive person on Twitter in terms of just Detroit Pistons. In the Detroit Pistons community, we have Pistons Thoughts. Welcome to the show, man.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me. Yeah, I try to hold it down for the positive community that lacks in our space.
I'm telling you, man, there's so much negativity right now just when you talk Detroit Pistons. So we need more people like you in the community that are positive and try to find the bright side of things.
I'm doing my best. It gets harder and harder each year, but
I mean, I would have loved to start this podcast on I know, Detroit Pistons win, obviously, but that didn't happen. And, we're going to get into it. Just kind of reactions today of like what you saw out there. Just maybe if you want to, focus on a player or just the team in general.
Well, I'll hold my role and start with the positives. I think Asar Thompson, Marcus Sasser looked really good today. I mean, Asar's efficiency offensively will come, but I like that he's staying aggressive and looking to score more than he was the first couple games. Sasser's a steal. I mean, everybody, including myself, was kind of like, why are we trading a couple picks to move up 6 spots to get this guy who's like an undersized point guard? Because he's good. He could hoop, he could defend, he could shoot. I think he should be starting. I've been saying that for over a week now. Nothing against my boy Killian, but I think Sasser should be starting. Cade's turnovers, it's something that just needs to get cleaned up. I would say just on the eye test, half of them are on him at least, probably a little more. Part of it's the spacing around him. Part of it's he's the only focus for the defense every single night at this point. Those are my big takeaways. We need Duren to get back to the defensive force he was the first couple games.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, the last week I was on a real big high with the Pistons. Obviously, they were 2-1. I was drinking the Kool-Aid. I was drunk, obviously, and People let me know. And I will admit when I'm wrong, I was wrong. But what I saw tonight, and just not only tonight, but the Pelicans game and games this week, even the Blazers game, is I kind of see them going back to what they were doing last year, where they weren't really moving the ball as much. A lot of isolations. Like first couple of games of the season, they ran a ton of pick and rolls.
Yep.
The ball movement was great. The body movement was great. I just don't see that right now over the past couple of games. It seems like, Cade has the ball and he's kind of forcing things, to your point. But
sure.
At the same time, you're doing him a disservice by not having proper floor spacers next to him. So I'm not saying he has to shoot 30 times a game, but that's the position you're kind of putting him in right now.
Agreed. Yeah. And to your point, the first few games, the ball movement, player movement, like it was just a free flowing offense. It looks so different from last year. And like you said, they sort of are reverting back to where they were with Casey a little bit, which isn't great.
No, it's not. I will say a positive for me was Asar Thompson tonight. He almost had a 5-5-5 game, which are extremely rare. I think Kevin Garnett was like the last person to do it, but I think he's been a real positive this year. Like his defense, just the way he plays. He just plays winning basketball. I thought he was a positive tonight. Sasser too. Thought he looked great, but to your point, like past 2 games, Jalen Duren just seems frustrated. Like he's just not playing with that same energy and force he was to start the season.
And it could be the ankle too. I mean, this happened last year where he hurt his ankle, came back, wasn't really the same. But part of that was also the Wiseman experiment. But yeah, I think, if it's the ankle, I think you need to just sit him for a couple more games, let it get right. Because, he's still impactful. But, defensively, he's the anchor. So it sort of starts with him. Defensively, we have not been what we need to be the last few games.
No, if you're letting a 30-year-old Eric Gordon get into the paint like he did tonight, it's just nobody could guard him. Kevin Durant was on the bench for a good 5-6 minutes because the Suns' bench was just torching us in the paint. Like it was, I think they had
that's when they basically put the game away. Yeah,
honestly insane. Like they were competitive, halftime trying to get it, back to I think it was like a 5 or 6 point lead that the Suns had, but it's
Yep.
just you see flashes of it and that just completely goes away. It's just not consistent, but I guess that's to be expected when you're such a young team.
Right. I mean, that's the tricky part too, is we are dealing with all the injuries. It is a young team, which is a big part of the turnover issue and the foul disparity. Which obviously, Monty talked about. You clipped it. Monty talked about it post game. We've been talking about it on Twitter for a few games now. The disparity is pretty nuts. A lot of it is on the Pistons. I mean, they're a young team. They're silly fouls defensively, and they don't know how to sell contact yet.
Yeah.
On the offensive end, especially Cade, even though he gets mauled every time he goes to the rim. But not an excuse. But when I was talking to Jack Kelly about this, basically, the refs aren't the reason we lost. Self-inflicted mistakes most of the time this season. But when the disparity is that big, it makes it impossible to overcome the mistakes that might be overcomable if the disparity is not there.
Yeah, I mean, I looked it up because I was kind of curious before we did do this podcast today, and the Pistons lead the league in fouls.
Yep.
180 so far in 7 games, so that's 25 a game. That's not great.
Yeah.
You can't be fouling people that much and expect to win. And to your point, I think the Pistons haven't really been outplayed this season. It's more self-inflicted wounds between turnovers, bad turnovers, sloppy passes, lazy passes, and fouls.
Yep.
Like there's still a lot to look forward to from a positive perspective. Like if they were getting blown out by 30 points and they weren't trying, then yeah, you kind of have the conversations, but they're trying. It's just they keep shooting themselves in the foot with these turnovers and the fouls. Like I think if they can clean that up, and we're going to get into the injury report in a little bit. I think a lot of these vets on this team can clean up probably half of these turnovers that they're committing each and every game.
I mean, Monte Morris leads the league in assist to turnover ratio, where he did last year at least.
I mean, I made some money on Cade's over-under turnovers tonight, so I'm kind of happy I hit that.
Until he cleans it up over every game.
Man, I made $100 tonight.
Yeah, nice. See, Cade's got your back.
Yeah, I mean, he had 5 turnovers tonight, and I bet the over on that. I was like, okay, I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, it does start with him at the end of the day with the turnovers. I mean, it's been every single. I don't know what he's averaging, but it's got to be over 5 a game, maybe 4.5.
I think someone had posted. I want to say it was West Davenport. I think it's like close to 7.
Yeah, no, it's not good. It's not good, and it does start with him. But again, as we said, it's like he's not in the best position, but a lot of it is still on him that he needs to clean up.
Yeah, I think he will too. I think getting those vets back will be so crucial.
And I mean, keep in mind, like he hasn't played NBA basketball in a year, basically. He's 7 games into getting his rhythm. You could see is coming back offensively. Hopefully, the turnovers lower as more rhythm comes back.
Yeah, I mean, I think 83rd game, which he just completed the NBA season, last week. Which, if you think about it, he's in his 3rd season.
Yep.
And I'm not trying to make excuses for him, but you see guys like Scotty Barnes, who he's been relatively healthy, getting drafted in the same year as Cade, and he's putting up monster numbers with the Raptors. I think Cade can get there. It's just getting into that basketball shape and getting his conditioning back there, which I think he will. I think he's a great player. I think we can both agree that's the cornerstone of this whole team is we go as far as Cade can take us.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the turnovers have been an issue since college, but I do think, just with, like you said, this is basically, for all intents and purposes, his 2nd season. He has no spacing around him. Get some more reps in, get some vets back, get some spacing. Maybe Troy makes a move down the line, but I think it'll clean up. And he's very self-aware of it too. It's not like he's like, oh my God, that's not on me.
Yeah, for sure. We can move on to the next topic. Just want to kind of I like to update our viewers with the injury reports. Obviously, you guys already know with the injuries, we still have Bojan Bogdanovic. He'll be reevaluated in 3 weeks. So we'll probably get an update 3rd week in November, which I can't wait for that, honestly.
Yeah,
Monte Morris will be reevaluated in 2 weeks, which I'm really excited for Monte Morris to come back. I think a lot of the Killian discourse, he's going to basically evaporate that talk away because I think he's going to be taking like 95% of his minutes.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think I know that Monty likes Killian a lot. Killian's been playing well, honestly, just is a terrible fit next to Cade at this point until his shot is more consistent. I think a lot of people don't realize.
I don't hate him in the starting lineup, but like,
yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize how good Monte Morris is. I mean, he's a top 3 backup point guard who, you know, if Cade's missing games, I think maybe when he comes back, he should be starting next to Cade. But he's a serviceable starter, and he's a really good backup point guard. I think his impact really is pretty undervalued right now because we haven't seen him, which makes sense.
Yeah, I said last week, I think he's one of the better backup point guards in the league. Not only is he a good floor general, he doesn't turn it over. He's damn near a 40% 3-point shooter too.
Yep.
So if Monty wants to get crazy and put Monte Morris next to Cade, he could if he wanted to.
I think he should.
Turnovers.
Right, for sure. Yeah.
We do have Isaiah Livers on this injury report as well. He's going to be reevaluated in 3 weeks, and there's a chance he may return before Bojan, which I had heard from some people that are like close to him that actually live in the same apartment building as him in Birmingham.
Nice.
He said like around, mid-second week in November, we could possibly see him back in the lineup, which I think would be huge. I really do.
Yeah. Agreed. I think he immediately takes Joe Harris's minutes, I think.
Yeah.
If Bojan's not back yet, I think there's a chance he slides into the starting lineup. You go Cade, Asar, Livers, and then, the 2 bigs, because I think the 2 bigs are just starting forever at this point. But, Stu's been good, though, so we'll see.
Today's the first game where I kind of felt like I didn't really notice him too much in the starting lineup. But to be fair, he was probably gassed trying to guard KD all night. Like
for sure.
Offensively, you didn't really see an impact from him, but defensively, I thought he did as well as you could against a guy like Kevin Durant.
Yeah,
and that's asking a whole lot of someone to guard one of the best offensive players in the NBA.
Not much anybody can do.
No. Last injury news we have is Alec Burks. So this is actually kind of a new injury. It's a left arm contusion. So it's just medical terminology. It's a bruise at the end of the day. He's just got a bruise on his arm that's discomfort. I know, when you see these injury reports, you got like these like 10 to 15 letter words and people are like, what the hell is that? It's just a bruise, you guys. I have a little bit of a medical background, so want to educate you guys that are listening. It's just a bruise. I don't know when he's going to be back, but you've really seen the offense kind of dip with Burks not being out there. Even though Sasser has been playing great, you're really missing Burks's veteran leadership, in my opinion.
For sure. He's got off to a really good start this season too. Like he's a spark plug we need off the bench that's been missing. Like you said, Sasser's been good, but not necessarily the same role.
No, not the same role at all. But he's one guy. Like last year, I said he's an elite foul baiter. Like he knows how to get to the line.
Yeah, he's a vet. He's been around.
I just want him to teach Cade how to do that. Like just be in the gym with Burks. Like just start baiting, start flopping, do something, man.
And Duren was getting mauled at the rim too today on lobs.
Oh.
But yeah, they just all need to. Part of that's just going to come with respect from officials as you get older. But we got to go to flop school. We got to figure this out.
Yeah, where's Patrick Beverly when you need him? Honestly, you would honestly be a really interesting bet on this team.
True, a lot of guards though.
Yeah, for sure. We're gonna get into some topics and. One of the topics I did want to ask you, because I do like to ask all of our guests that do come on this podcast, this is a relatively very touchy-feely topic, especially on Twitter. What are your thoughts on this Ivey situation? Are you for him coming off the bench? Do you understand where Monty Williams is coming from?
Yes to both. There's some caveats all the way through. I honestly, before the season started, I was like, what if you do bring Ivey off the bench, let him just run free and just lead the second unit, just get spark off the bench. I think that could be a really good role for him. He's playing 20-ish minutes a game, 22 minutes a game. That's low. When I proposed it, I was like, bring him off the bench, play 30 minutes a night, finish games, all that, just for lineup balance, at least until we figure out our starting lineup spacing around Cade. But Ivey's shot looks, like he picked up where he left off last year, which was good. I get where Monty's coming from. On the flip side, like especially the other night, where he essentially sparked the comeback.
Yeah.
End of the third quarter, made some big defensive plays, great offensive plays, didn't play the entire fourth quarter. Like that was a problem for me. But I do see on the flip side of that, Monty, long run, if this sort of plays out where Monty's challenging him, it works. Jaden becomes a better, more consistent defender, which is the problem, the consistency. Then I think it's a win, obviously. I do see like what Monty's trying to do. And I think Jaden is a high character guy where it could work. But I worry, especially after games like the other game, like we're talking about where he sparks the comeback, doesn't play the fourth. I worry about how that, is taken and looks.
That's the first time this season where I couldn't agree with the substitution.
Yeah.
Because in that Pelicans game, like the Pistons were not close until the third quarter. And I felt like not only Ivey, but Sasser really impacted that comeback.
Definitely.
He had a block and then he like went in transition and dunked it and go to the fourth quarter, subs him out.
Right.
That's where I didn't agree with it. Now to Monty's point, I understand that he is not the defender that Killian Hayes is.
Right.
I think we can both agree that Killian Hayes is a better defender as of right
sure.
now. I can understand where he's coming from because his stealing is way higher than Killian Hayes, and I think that's why he's been so hard on him because he sees so much potential in him that he could become a two-way, star guard in this league if he really puts that same energy on offense that he would on defense. And I think we've seen him try. Like in the preseason, I saw him, lock up Josh Giddey. Yep. This is probably the most defense I've ever seen out of him. And I think with Casey last year, Casey just kind of let him just go out there and do his thing without any repercussions. Like he was able to, make mistakes and, not get yelled at or, be held accountable or coached up. I think that's why Monty has been so hard on him is because he sees how great he could possibly be. He's just trying to coach him along the way and kind of teach him like, hey, like if you can outperform Killian Hayes, that starting job is yours. But as of right now in the defensive end, you're just not doing that. That's how I've seen it. And maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. But I mean, there are like to me, the message just isn't always consistent. It's always Ivey.
Right. I think, no, I agree with that. I do think that Monty is coming in and trying to undo a lot that, of the bad habits that were just let go under Casey. But yeah, I think like instances like the Pelicans game, I think that, like you said, it needs to be consistent where it's like I think you need to, I'm not an NBA coach, but you should reward him for the stretch. You just say, at least let him play a few minutes into the fourth. And like, if things go haywire, you take him out, you make the adjustment then, but not coming right off of a few back-to-back plays where it really sparked a turnaround.
Yeah, I think Pistons Twitter is just melting right now. Like I'm sure you've seen it.
Yeah.
They have Jaden Ivey in a jail cell. Like that's my whole timeline right now.
Yeah.
Like if you guys aren't on Twitter watching live, they basically put Jaden Ivey in a jail cell, and that's all you see for like avatars or profile pictures on Twitter. It is the funniest thing. Like I love Pistons Twitter, negative or positive. You guys are comical. Like
very creative too.
Yeah, they don't get enough credit. Honestly, I think we're pretty much both in agreement with the Ivy situation. Like we understand it, but at the same time, it's like that message is it's not. What's the word I'm looking for? It's not consistent with other players on the team because other players on the team have made defensive mishaps and they don't get benched. So I don't know. I mean,
like you mentioned, like I think it part of the reason why I'm projecting what I assume is the reason is that like I think he sees more in Ivy than he might in some of the other guys, and is like, all right, I really need to undo some bad habits you have. let me light this fire under you. You're coming off the bench. It's not a demotion, but you do need to earn the minutes. And he mentioned earning minutes after the Pelicans game. I think, it's just, we'll see. I think it could go one of two ways, obviously, but I think long term it's probably going to work out.
Yeah, I think why some fans are so nervous about the situation is they don't want another Ayton thing happening with Ivy. Like, do you trust Ivy not to kind of crack and not give a shit,
I think I do. Maybe not if this is going on 50, 60 games in, but for the next 20, 30 games, I think it might be like this. But it also depends, like, when the vets come back, what the rotation looks like. But on the flip side, my issue with the bench situation, where, again, I do get it, I even suggested it this summer, is long-term you want to see Cade and Ivy together on the court as much as possible.
Yeah, not to even, like, mention, but I had posted, like, Killian Hayes versus Jaden Ivey stats this week.
Oh, boy.
And you look at the shooting percentages, like Ivy shooting close to 43% on good volume, close to 50% from the field on decent volume. Obviously, defensively he's not there right now, but
of course.
I think I would trade some offense for, maybe Killian Hayes locks down someone and he has 6 points. I'll take a 15-point performance versus 6-point performance. That's just me. I can live with that at the end of the day.
Well, also the defense hasn't been good recently.
Yeah.
Like, if we were still playing like the first couple games, we're winning games. We should have been 3-0. But if it looks like that and the defense is that good and it's turning to wins, no one, I don't think, will have a problem with anything. The issue is the defense. He's going for the defensive lineup and it's not working right now.
Yeah, like I said, it's just kind of head scratching with the free agency moves. It's like there's some guys out there I probably would have signed if that was the message you're trying to get across.
Right.
Like trading for Joe Harris is kind of a head scratcher. I get it, cap space wise, but I mean, you could have splurged for like a Torrey Craig.
Well, also, like, and not to get into the Troy discussion, I'm a big Troy supporter. I do criticize things he does though. But like, I don't know why you make that trade. Wasn't it the day before free agency? Like, why not see how things play out? Like, see where everything's at. Like, I don't know. Like, Harris, realistically, with everyone healthy, probably isn't in the rotation either. Like, I understand, like, you get another shooter, all good, but like, I don't know. I don't understand the timing of a lot of moves.
Yeah, I've kind of been critical on Troy, and I know people that watch this podcast for over the past year. I'm always like, why are you helping teams when they're in a financial situation? Why not take advantage of that?
Right.
Like, I was kind of advocating for Cam Johnson because I thought, him next to Cade would have been a good fit.
Yeah.
But at the price point or like around 30 million, did it really make sense? I don't know. Who am I to say? But yeah. I think defensively, spacing wise, it would have been a lot better than like what we currently have.
Right. I mean, I don't think Cam's played this season yet, right?
He's played a little bit, but I mean, his numbers.
His really injury history is a little. The injury history is what scared me. I was still all in, and for better or worse, but I was like, let's all take a step back and just note that he hasn't played over, I don't know what the number is off the top of my head, but like 50 something games yet.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not defending Troy by any means, but some moves kind of have me scratching my head, and they still have open roster spot, and they haven't used it yet. Like,
and I think everybody is just like waiting for like, when's he going to pull the trigger on something this season, maybe after the December 15th deadline, if that's still the deadline when new free agents can be traded. Or if it's a trade deadline thing, is that too late? I don't know. But I'm guessing he just wants to see what this team looks like. I was a little perplexed why he didn't make any free agent signings. I mean, Kelly Oubre was right there, overpay him to get him here for a year. Even Torrey Craig. We could talk about all the what ifs this summer all day.
Yeah, I was campaigning for Kelly Oubre in the last winter, and people are calling me freaking crazy.
Yep.
But I do want to transition over to Killian Hayes. So my question to you is: do you think he'll be a long term solution in the starting lineup when everyone comes back healthy?
I think absolutely not. And I'm one of the bigger Killian supporters in Pistons Twitter. But it became pretty clear last season to me that, in a perfect world, he's your backup one, running the show, and, isn't exactly what we wanted him to be when we picked him. But you change expectations along the way when you see, what the ceiling is.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I don't think, unless, but we're 3 years in now, right? This is fourth year, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
this is fourth year. I mean, unless the shot becomes consistent, which, we're year 4, I'm not banking on that at this point. It just doesn't make sense because I think, like we were talking about earlier, it's such a disservice to Cade and the team to surround Cade with nobody who can shoot. I think
Yeah,
that's what it comes down to.
that's been my thing with him. Like, I have no problems with Killian Hayes getting minutes. I really don't.
Right.
I think he can still get minutes when everyone is back healthy.
Yeah.
But not 30 minutes a game. Like the Pelicans game, I think he had like 38 or 39 minutes, which is like really high. I think he led the team in minutes that night. But I don't know. Like people, I had texted a buddy of mine who covers the Phoenix Suns. He's just like, Killian Hayes is going to be your Landry Shamet, and you're going to hate it. And I didn't know what he meant. And then I looked up Landry Shamet while Monty Williams was there. I was like, I swear to God, it better not happen. I swear, man.
Also, I mean, I do think, so when we made the Monte Morris trade, I thought Killian was done here. Especially with Sasser coming into it's like, where is he fit at all? I still kind of feel that way. We'll see what happens when Morris comes back and Burks is back. But I mean, maybe he just makes Monte Morris expendable, which is kind of a bummer because, Monte from Michigan, and like we talked about, he's one of the better backups in the league. But maybe that's what happens and you get something from Monte Morris. Or alternatively, somebody sees value in Killian and you get something for Killian. Because he's played decent this year. I mean, everybody I think is overreacting every time. But I get where you're coming from because you'd rather see Ivy in these minutes, Sasser in these minutes. He shouldn't be leading the team in minutes. So I get it. But he's been solid.
Yeah, I saw something on Twitter. I can't remember who said it. Because I like to give credit to people when they do have takes, but they said, "What if Monty and Troy are just kind of throwing him out in the starting lineup and saying like, hey, this guy was available. You're raising the trade value. Like, look what he's doing on CJ McCollum. He locked him down the whole fourth quarter."
Right.
I know there were rumors this past summer about the Mavericks possibly wanting Bojan. I don't know if that's something that they want to explore. Maybe you get a Tim Hardaway Jr. and maybe a Maxi Kleber or something like that. I don't know. That's the only trade like I've actually seen reported that maybe that a suitor wants Killian Hayes, but outside of last year where he had that month of games where he was just playing like a lottery pick, I just don't really see him as a long-term fit. I much rather lock up Monte Morris as a backup point guard than give Killian an extension because I just don't think he's in the long-term plans. And I'm not trying to hate on him. I think he's a good player. I think he's at best a backup point guard in this league. And I think that's something a lot of, teams need right now. Like I think Phoenix could use him. I think San Antonio could use him. There's a lot of teams that could use his services. I just don't think long term he's in the Pistons' plans. But that's just my view as an outsider trying to look in. I don't know what they're going to do. Like if he gets an extension, I'm probably going to deactivate Twitter for like 2 weeks.
It's going to be a dangerous time on Twitter. But no, I do agree with you. Like I was saying, like last season, it sort of came into picture for me that like at best he's a good backup, which isn't exactly what you wanted with the 7th pick, but isn't terrible. I mean, you drafted Cade after him, so it's like he didn't need to be your point guard of the future anymore. But yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, it's like you can find I mean, we just got Monte Morris for free, basically, who's, right now a better backup than Killian and will be theoretically for the next few years. But it's like, backups you can always find in free agency and trades. So, which makes just him inherently expendable, assuming that's what they see his ceiling as.
Yeah, I mean, you got Monte Morris for a second-round pick because the Wizards didn't want to pay him.
Right.
Former Piston Ish Smith is on the Hornets.
Right.
And they got him for basically nothing. Like,
right.
I think you can get, good backups for relatively cheap in the NBA. And I just like I don't think he's in the Pistons long-term plans. That's just my thing. But if he does become a Landry Shamet type of player under Monty here, I think a lot of fans are going to be very upset because view it as Dwayne Casey and Corey Joseph. That's basically what a lot of Suns fans are saying. Like, you really trust them, he's going to throw them out there. I hope that's not the case when everyone's healthy and he's getting 25 minutes a night, because I think a lot of fans would be really upset that is the case.
I mean, I think, I don't think he's going to be starting, moral of the story, long term. I think if he ends up being your point guard off the bench, I think people are going to be able to stomach that, assuming we're playing well and you surround him with shooters.
Yeah.
Which we don't have that many of.
No, not right now. I'm glad we're in agreement, though, with this, because I was just like, man, if I ask him this question, he's all on Killian, I'm going to feel like a huge asshole. But
I mean, look, I'm still a big Killian supporter. I've come to terms with what I think his ceiling is. And again, I sort of, this summer when we got Monte Morris, I was like, all right, well, Killian's gone and it's probably for the better, but I still believe in him. Just my expectations are lower than they once were.
I'm good with like 10 to 15 minutes a game, not 25 to 35. That's all.
Yeah.
This is another question, which it's a starting lineup question, and we kind of talked about it earlier. Is there a case to start Marcus Sasser next to Cade Cunningham?
I think right now, tomorrow, it should happen. Until Monte Morris is back, and then I think he's probably the better option. Till Bojan's back, who's the better option? It becomes, a health situation, but I think Sasser, and I do, again, understand for where Monty Williams is coming from, where it's like, you don't necessarily want to shake up the starting lineup 3 games in, right? You lose 2 in a row. You want to see if you can get some consistency and see if you can make this work. Now we're 4 in a row. I don't think it made sense from the start, but it was going well for the first 3 games. But 4 losses in a row, I think it's time. Even when we were winning games, it was glaringly obvious you needed more spacing around Cade. Sasser over the last few games, and Monty has praised him post-game the last couple of games, has been really solid on both ends. So I think just right now, while you're waiting on everybody to get healthy, do it. That's my take.
Yeah, I think he had a career high in points, and he had like 21 or 22 points. Game before against the Pelicans, he had 18 or 19 points or something like that. The more I watch him, the more he just looks so under control, and you can tell he played college for more than one season.
Yep.
And I think that's really helped him at the next level. And you even saw it tonight a little bit. Like, Cade could kind of free up. He didn't have 3-4 guys on him because he could pass the ball to Sasser. And the floor kind of opened up a little bit more because now you have a guy that I think he's shooting over 50% from 3. I don't know how long that's going to last.
Right.
With more attempts and obviously going up against, starting units versus bench units. But I think it's worth a shot. He's 6'1", 6'2", scrappy defender.
Yeah.
There were instances where he was trying to check KD, and KD's like, man, who is this little guy? Like, honestly, I just love his toughness. And I don't think it would hurt to put him in the starting lineup. I really don't. I mean, you get Cade the floor spacing he needs, and you obviously have a pit bull and a Sar Thompson out there just guarding everybody.
Right.
I don't really think, having him and Killian out there together helps Cade's case in terms of just spacing, because we've seen he gets into the paint and it's just swarmed. Like, the defenses are just getting the ball. Cade's making like really like bonehead like one hand passes. You're like, dude, what are you doing?
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Especially, I mean, here's the thing. It's like, if your end goal is playing, which I think internally it probably is, even though they know it may not be realistic. Hopefully it is. That'd be great. But at a certain point, I mean, I know we're really early in the season, but you can't stumble onto a 5, 6, 7, 8 game losing streak. We got a tough schedule coming up too.
Yeah.
Like, I think you need to, like, wins have slipped you by. You know, we have 2 winnable games. Pelicans, I'm blanking on the other one now, and I can't think of anything. But I think and the Blazers, we should have won that game. But I think you just we're 7 games in, make the starting lineup change. Sasser's earned it. I don't think you should view it as a demotion for Killian because, again, he's played solid, even though nobody wants to see him in the starting lineup. But it's clearly not working. The defense first lineup with 0 spacing is clearly not working. You need to find a middle ground, and I think Sasser right now is the middle ground.
Not only that, I think his ability to just his one-on-one game and his isolation game, I think, is something that, well, maybe, Cade doesn't have it that night. You can kind of rely on him. I mean, he was getting past Nurkic tonight. He was getting past a lot of his defenders.
Right.
Because he's got such a game where it reminds me of Terry Rozier a lot. Like when I watch him, that's who I see. I just see a lot of Terry Rozier just offensively, just able to break his man down and get by him or hit a really big 3-pointer when they need it.
Yep.
I know, like, I've seen your tweets. You're like, we need to start Sasser. Like, I'm with you. I think it makes sense. I think I've seen enough of the Killian Hayes next to Cade experiment. I'm okay with him just running the second unit because I think he would flourish more because there's more shooting out there.
Agreed. Totally.
Yeah. I'm glad we're on the same page, though. I think a lot of Pistons fans are too. I think they're kind of like, we can't lose 5 games in a row because you got the Warriors tomorrow.
Right. Right, exactly. And look, I mean, I would suggest starting Ivy, but I know that Monty's not going to do that right now. But I do think that, but again, like we were talking about earlier, like I understand what Monty's trying to do with Ivy, and I hope it plays out how it can, and it pushes Ivy more, especially on the defensive end. We'll see how it plays out. But yeah, I think as of right now, your best option is probably Sasser. Which, who knew coming into the season that would be that?
Yeah, like I know some fans probably aren't going to like that he's skipping over Ivy again.
Right.
But I think what I would say to those fans is Sasser defensively is doing what Monty wants him to do. And I think that's why he would probably get a nod. I mean, he in the beginning of the season, Monty was kind of leaning him in maybe 5-10 minutes. Now he's getting like, with Burks being out, he's getting like basically 6-man minutes.
Yeah.
And he's contributing. Like he's not afraid of the moment. I mean, dropping 20 points in the Suns is nothing to sneeze at either.
Yeah, for sure. And he looked good doing it. He just, I mean, his confidence is through the roof. Every time he shoots, I think it's going in.
Yeah, same here. He had a 3-pointer tonight. I thought it was going in. It did. I was like, oh, damn, it didn't go in. Wow.
Yeah.
I did have a Celtics fan quote tweet me and a highlight earlier tonight. Like, I can't believe we passed up on this guy and gave Peyton Pritchard an extension. So from a Celtics fan saying that, I know we got a good pick in Sasser.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, Troy. I mean, look, Troy, for the most part, when it comes to draft picks, he's pretty much knocked them out of the park. I mean, we'll ignore his first draft and go from there. But Sasser, I mean, look, he had to trade up to get him. He got his guy. I was a little critical on draft night because I'm like, why are you trading up 6 picks? He got his guy. I'm glad he got his guy.
Yeah, I honestly thought, like, if Whitmore wasn't taken by the Rockets, I thought that was going to be their guy. I was just like, oh, maybe Whitmore will slip to 25. No, it didn't happen. But I'm happy with the Sasser pick. I really am. He's looking like one of the better draft picks so far in this draft class. I know it's only 7 games in, but
right. But he looks good. He looks like he belongs. Which, especially this early, you can lean on.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a rookie at all. Wanted to ask you what your impressions on Cade Cunningham are this season. Now, obviously, we know missed all last season, had surgery. But what have your, impressions been, positive and negatively?
Negatively, obviously, the turnovers have just been disgusting. The numbers have been bad. A lot of seemingly lazy turnovers. But again, like we talked about, they're doing him no favors with the lineups around him for the most part. It's tricky. I think just like off the bat, like he's looked really good pretty consistently. More times than not, he's looked really good. There's been a couple stretches in games where he sort of becomes invisible. A couple stretches in games where he's forcing too much, bad shots, turnovers, etc. But I think more times than those are the negatives, but I think more times than not, he's looked really good.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. I think a lot of fans, when they saw the USA stuff, saw Rico Hines, they saw, the Remy runs down in Florida. I think they missed him on the basketball court, and that's to be expected because,
right.
I mean, some of the lineups they were throwing out last year, like as a fan, no fan should have to go through that. I'm sorry. They really shouldn't.
I know.
I'm not going to name any names, but I know some people want me to. Anytime you're calling up guys from the Motor City Cruise in your starting lineup, that's just not a good sign.
Yeah. Also, Cade's shot, sorry to add on real quick to the positives, his shots look great, especially off the catch and shoot. Which I think is big when he's theoretically down the line playing with Ivy, Monte Morris, Boyan, all that. When there's attention on other guys and he just gets to spot up for a possession, I mean, he's shooting 36% from three right now, which is a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a big knock on him too. Like a lot of people didn't think that he was going to be a good 3-point shooter because I think he shot like sub 30% his rookie year.
Yeah.
And last year he struggled a little bit, but I think him off ball, he's proved that, he can, knock down those 3-point shots.
Right.
I think negatively, I think we're both on the same wavelength. Turnovers, they got to go down. They really do. Yeah. There were a couple tonight where I'm just like, he threw the ball at Isaiah Stewart, and like there are like maybe 4 or 5 Phoenix Suns defenders. He tried to throw it over the defenders. It was a turnover. Threw the ball at Duran's feet. It's just like I think he's just kind of getting overwhelmed a little bit, trying to have the ball in his hands like 90% of the time, and it's just sloppy turnovers. Because the turnovers that he has so far this year, they're fixable. He's just got to watch more film and kind of break down the game and let the game come to him. I feel like he's just trying to rush things and kind of force things right now, and they're fixable. Like some of the passes, I don't think he's going to be making. I don't know, in February. I think he can fix it. He's just got to get in game shape, like we talked about earlier.
Agreed.
In the podcast, I think honestly, I'm not really too worried about the turnovers, even though. It's like 6-7 a game, which I think he leads the league in turnovers. Yeah. He's like top 5 in points and top 5 in assists, which is wild to me. But
right. I mean, he's averaging over 7 assists a game, which is great.
Yeah. I mean, I had a really wild prediction. I said 11 because I thought he could get people just involved, especially because I thought like Boyan being in the lineup, you're having Asar Duran. I thought that he would just be throwing it out there like Halliburton, but
right. I mean, I see that. We'll see. We'll see when everyone's healthy. But I do think, like, with the turnovers, like, he's never going to be a 1 to 2 turnover a game guy, I don't think. But, I mean, no player with his usage is. I think, cut it down to 2 to 3 turnovers a game. You live with that just based on the usage and, all that with the offensive possessions riding on him. But I think you just cut him in half. Go from 6 to 3, and we're in a totally different position.
Honestly, like I don't think he's a 7 turnover a game point
Definitely
guard.
not.
I really don't. Like I think when Boyan comes back, a good 10 to 12 possessions are going to Boyan.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the turnovers just automatically get lowered. And then when Monte Morris comes back, turnovers will probably get even lower then because he doesn't really turn the ball over a whole lot.
For sure.
So I know a lot of fans are just like really hyper focused on that, but you kind of have to look at what's around him. And when you look what's around him, they're like, who's he supposed to pass it to? Killian Hayes on the wing. He's supposed to pass it to Asar, even though he did knock down some 3-point shots tonight.
That was a good sign.
I can't remember if it might have been the Blazers game where he just shot like 6 straight pointers in the first 3 minutes, and it's just like, what's going on?
Yeah, I know the Pelicans game. He had like 5 air balls. I think it was that was a 5 games in 7 night situation where his legs were just gone. But it was nice to see him hit a couple tonight.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just so impressed with him as a rookie. Like definitely got the pick right. Like
he's
Scoot
just
Henderson.
such a game changer, man. Like just beyond the number. I mean, but the numbers have been good too, especially steals and blocks and rebounds. But he's just a game changer.
All right, we got the last topic of the show, and then we can do some questions if you're game for it.
Let's do it.
So the Pistons still have open roster spot. Is there a player you'd sign or possibly wait until December 15th to trade for?
I think at this point you wait, because at this point you've basically committed to waiting for your guys to get back healthy over the next 2, 3, 4 weeks. At that point, because the thing is, the Pistons sort of have a lot of redundancy positionally of players in like the same skill group, basically, where a lot of guys are pretty interchangeable at their positions and no one really stands out. I don't think any free agent's still available. I'm not honestly, I don't know who's still available, but I could almost guarantee you that none of them will stand out. It just sort of be adding to the mud. So I think maybe waiting till December 15th, see what happens when all your guys are back. And then I think you have to make trades unless it's a miraculous turnaround from where we're at now, which isn't impossible because it's pretty bad right now and you have some pretty key players out. But I think at this point, you've committed to waiting until your guys are back. Ride it out.
So I just looked up available free agents, and the only one that really kind of pops off the screen is Terrence Ross, which I don't really think. Yeah, I don't really think you need scoring, but he is a little bit older. But I mean, that's a guy that can light it up. I think Will Barton's available too. Kevin Porter Jr. I know the Pistons aren't touching that.
No, I don't think anyone's touching that.
No. There's not like a whole lot of free agents out there, but you never really know who's going to become available on December 15th. I mean, if the Grizzlies keep losing like this, you never know.
Yeah. I mean, even before then, teams get desperate. I mean, because the Pistons aren't expected to make the playoffs or play in. The goal is play in, and that would be nice. And I think it is attainable depending on how things shake out. But like a team like the Grizzlies, if they keep losing like this, by game 15, 20, they might need to shake it up, even though Ja's coming back 25. Is it 25 games?
I believe so, yeah.
But I mean, you can't be 3-12, 10 games before he gets back and not do anything about it.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I look at Washington and I feel like they could use a James Wiseman because you kind of look at their center depth. And they have some interesting pieces. Obviously, they're a rebuilding team, but I mean,
well, they're at the beginning of the rebuild, essentially. Even though they still have Kuzma and Poole, and maybe they're not at the beginning. But yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, it's the only because I could see the Pistons moving on from Wiseman, and that would probably be the only possible red mark on Troy Weaver's tenure is trading Bey for Wiseman, and Bey's doing his thing in Atlanta.
My only counter, and I don't disagree, just to be clear off the bat, my only counter is that if you weren't planning on extending Sadiq, you don't want to pay him all that money. He doesn't necessarily fit in this core group going forward. Then it's worth just seeing, maybe Wiseman looks better than he does. If you're just essentially going to commit to losing Bey for nothing, we don't know what other offers were on the table. I would like to think there was better. I actually hope there wasn't, because if he turned down something better for Wiseman, that's where we run into more issues. But I think the counter to that, which I don't disagree with, again, is that if you weren't going to extend Sadiq, you might as well see, what Wiseman looks like.
Yeah, I mean, personally, like the Hawks have him kind of like in a hybrid role. Like some games he started this year. I think he started 3 games this year out of the first 5 or 6 games the Hawks have played, and he's kind of in like that 6-man role. I don't know. I would like to think Sadiq off the bench would add more value currently to this team.
Agreed.
But I had kind of heard, we had Corey Woods on a couple weeks ago, and he said that when they were at a press conference, right after it ended, they traded Sadiq Bey. And he had asked Troy Weaver, do you have any plans to move on anybody? He's like, nope. 10 minutes later, they trade Sadiq Bey. I was just like, wow, okay. Kind of tells me what I need to know. Maybe they're not. They weren't on the same page. Maybe he was kind of stick of the message that was across with, the rebuilding phase or restoring phase. Who knows?
Yeah, and Wiseman is a guy that Troy really liked in the draft. Yeah. So again, my only counter is if you weren't going to extend Sadiq, which I understand not wanting to pay him all that money and sort of lock up more cap for someone who, theoretically is a good six man. At this stage in the rebuild, it probably didn't make sense to do that and lock the money up. You just did it with Stu. If you did it with Stu plus Sadiq plus Killian, now you're looking at a muddy cap sheet for a mediocre team. So I understand moving Sadiq, but yeah, I mean, Wiseman clearly has not been what Troy wanted.
Yeah, like I didn't understand. I know it's completely off topic. Like you signed Bagley to a 3-year deal.
Yep.
You extend Stewart this year too. Going in actually this summer, going to I believe next year it'll go on the cap. I don't really understand why you would trade for Wiseman. That was my whole thing. Is like I'd rather take the 5 seconds and gamble because 5 seconds can get you maybe an asset that you actually want.
That was my argument immediately with the trade too. I was like, wait, we could have got the 5 seconds, and everyone's like, no one cares about seconds. Like, well, I'm like, wait, but you could package 5 seconds.
I mean, you got a second for Monte Morris,
right? Like, especially on draft night. But
yeah, I think some people devalue second round picks because like, oh, it's a second round pick. Who cares? But I mean, the Bucks literally traded 5 seconds for Jake Crowder and they didn't play him.
Right.
Like it's just like some teams just throw them around. Like
it is funny. Yeah. Every year, every summer, it's like the value is just totally inflated or deflated by like 1 or 2 teams of whatever the picks are going to be worth that year.
Yeah, it's crazy. We do have a few questions. I'm going to answer a few and then we can just wrap this up.
Sweet.
This comes from John Buck. So he had a question. What is more likely? Cade Cunningham being an all-star, Jalen Duren having a most improved season, or Ausar Thompson being an NBA all-defensive team?
I like them all. I would say Ausar, though, being all defensive, because all-star depends on wins. If the Pistons are winning enough to knock out the other guards in the East, then Cade could be an all-star. But I think, and I'm honestly just going to discount Duren as MIP because I think Cade would be over him. I think there's probably other guys this year, like Shaedon Sharpe. And we'll see. I mean, if Duren goes back to where he was the first few years, I mean, look, his numbers look great, but he's got to anchor the team, all that. But I think Ausar is just eye-popping defensively.
I think I'm going to say Ausar defensive team.
Yep.
As a rookie, I think it's more realistic because, to your point, I feel like an all-star voting, the Pistons are going to have to at least be an 8 seed or a 7 seed for them to even consider Cade Cunningham and the all-star. I think if Duren wants to be MIP, he's going to have to put up games like he did against the Bulls, like on a nightly basis, like 18 and 15 and 4 blocks. Yeah. And I don't really think that's sustainable for him right now. Not to say that I don't think he can get to that point. I think he can. I just don't think he's there yet. So if I had to take a guess, I think Ausar does get a defensive team this year, just based off of everything we've seen in 7 games. He's everywhere, man. Blocking shots, assisting, getting to the basket, cutting to the basket. You can't players try to set screens and he just fights over the screen. You can't even screen for Ausar Thompson. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, numbers look good. Eye test looks good. He's, like I said, just game changer, very impactful on that end. And it's very obvious.
Yeah, it really is. I'm really glad that he was there at 5 for us.
Dude, me too. I was not, basically until the night before the draft when it looks like they were going to go with him. I was kind of like, I don't know about this one. Troy? I mean, I was still on the Cam Whitmore train until all this stuff came out about him. And I was like, oh, good thing we didn't listen to me. But yeah, just immediately watching film on Ausar and really deep diving, you're like, oh, wait a second. If the shot ever comes around, he's a superstar.
Did you ever, so apparently the Cam Whitmore stuff, I was reading an article from The Athletic. Apparently his coach, which this is really messed up. Cam Whitmore's coach telling scouts like, yeah, he's a bad player. He does all this stuff when he really didn't.
Right. Yeah. No, that was really messed up.
I was like, why the hell would you say that about a player? Like, I don't get that. I think that's why his draft stock fell so low.
And the knee thing, I think, was an issue too. But yeah, but then when he started falling all the way back, I was like, we should probably trade it. Like, it's worth the gamble at this point. But I'm so glad we got Ausar. Moral of the story.
Yeah, I swear. Every year Houston drafts someone that I want. Every year.
Yep. Every time.
This comes from Rasheed Wallace's Bald Spot. That is a goated YouTube name. That really is.
I love it. Iconic.
Will Bojan be starting when he returns to surround Cade Cunningham with more shooting?
Yeah. No, I think he's a day one starter, unless basically the only scenario I could see where he's not starting when he gets back is, let's say Monte Morris comes back 2 weeks earlier. Stu is shooting the lights out. Ausar is doing what he's doing, and Monte's looking great. I think maybe you bring him off the bench when he comes back if that lineup is looking good over a 2 week span and not just like 1 or 2 games. Other than that scenario, I think, yeah, he's starting right when he comes back.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I was kind of talking with, I think it was, I can't remember his Twitter name, but we were talking about possibly moving Ausar to the 2 next to Cade.
Yeah.
So you could still have Ausar in the lineup, but have Bojan at the 3 and Stewart and Dern at the 4.
I think that's the likeliest starting lineup when he gets back.
Yeah, because I think you have the defense there that you want, and then you have the floor spacing that you want also. And I know a lot of people probably want Ivy at the 2.
Yeah.
But because you're not going to put Bojan at the 4 next to Duran, because that would be awful.
So that's my perfect lineup coming into the season: Cade, Ivy, Ausar, Bojan, and Duran. But there's caveats. Duran has to be the defensive player we saw in the first few games. Ausar is Ausar, and Ivy needs to be a serviceable defender. Otherwise, that lineup's getting torched. Yeah. But if they can do those things, I think you have enough defense surrounding Bojan and Ivy. But it's... I mean, at this point, probably not.
You could hide Bojan if you have Ausar at the 2, in my opinion.
But you can't hide Bojan and Ivy defensively.
No, like offensively, they're going to score 120, but they'll probably give
which might be enough.
Yeah. I mean, you could be like the Mavericks and say we're going to outscore you. Like, we don't care about defense.
Yeah, I think we'll see. I kind of have a feeling Bojan's not going to be a Piston after the trade deadline.
Yeah, we'll see, man. I don't know. Troy, I can't remember the last time Troy has actually traded someone that he signed and we got equal value back. I really can't.
Yeah, that's my biggest criticism of Troy is that I think he gets his guy, does what he wants that fits his master plan, but doesn't necessarily feel the need to win every individual move. And I've been thinking that basically almost every trade he's made. I mean, he's had some bangers of trades, but I feel like a lot of them, especially the smaller ones that are, they're inconsequential, but still, we don't need to go on a Troy tangent. Yeah, but I still believe in Troy.
Same here. I just think sometimes he holds on to players too long and they lose value. That's just been my biggest thing. Like, I remember Derrick Rose. Like, I remember the Lakers wanted Derrick Rose and we trade him to the Knicks for nothing against Dennis Smith Jr.
Right.
But you get Dennis Smith in a second. Like, Lakers were willing to give you a couple seconds. And I think Kendrick Nunn or something like that. It's just like, I'd rather take the seconds and none just to see what's there. But
for sure.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that was my first thought when the injury report came out. Was it the day before the regular season? They're like, oh, surprise, Bojan's actually out for a month plus. I was like, well, going to be tough to trade him unless he looks great when he gets back, because he's 35 and starting the season missing a month.
I mean, you could waive him next year if he's like really bad.
Right. He is not guaranteed.
Yep. Yeah. This is actually a good question from Wes Weaver Jr. He said, would you guys trade Jaden Ivey, Marvin Bagley, Killian, and a first for Anthony Edwards?
In a heartbeat.
Yeah, but the T-Wolves won't.
Right. That's my favorite thing to tell people is if you would do something close to in a heartbeat, other teams not touching it.
Yeah, I think if you want Anthony Edwards, you're throwing Cade Cunningham in that discussion.
For the Wolves to consider it, yeah. But Cat, on the other hand,
we've talked about that several times on this podcast.
Oh boy. Cat's an interesting one.
I mean, my big thing is I just don't think he's a Troy guy. Like when I watch him play, I know he's talented.
Yep.
But I the money to me is just like that. That's a lot to commit to.
It is. But especially with the Cade extension coming up. But you do have theoretically $60 to $80 million in cap space this summer. Not a huge ton of free agents out there, as there never will be in any given class. But yeah, just use it in trades, not on Joe Harris's.
Yeah, I don't know. I like Cat. I think my ideal power forward that I would trade for is Lauri Markkanen.
Oh, 100%.
I know. We're talking about it last week. Like I've been talking about that for a year. Like that's like the perfect stretch for to pair next to Cade and Duren. Not that perfect. Nothing against Isaiah Stewart, but like Lauri Markkanen could open things up so much. But I don't know what Utah would want for him. I really don't.
That package plus a couple more first round picks.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we're just kind of living like in a fantasy land. I don't think Utah's going to do that.
Yeah,
like, at all. Got a question from Kevin May. What's the biggest thing Monty's been trying to preach so far this year?
I think defense seems like the big one, which is, why the starting lineup is what it is, which is good. And I love that that's the biggest thing he's preaching, because without that, we're not going to be good enough offensively unless you go get Markkanen and, Anthony Edwards. Then you don't need to preach defense as much. But yeah, I think defense has been the preaching point. It's looked great half the games. It's looked pretty bad the other half.
Yeah, I think with the young team, consistency will never be there.
Yep.
It just won't. But you can start to build towards that. I would say discipline and defense is the two words that come out of his mouth, and the standard, which I guess like every time I hear the standard, I'm like, is that a new word for rebuilding? He's like, the standard, the standard. Right. I was like, what the hell's a standard?
Yeah. But I think that's going to look, I mean, like defense and offense obviously go hand in hand. It's like when you're missing a bunch of shots, you got to go play transition defense now. And you're not set up when the opposing team offense comes down. When you're not getting stops, you got to play half court offense. You're not getting on transition. So I do think once you get some of your guys back who are better offensively, that's going to help your defense, vice versa. It's just going to look better, at least.
Yeah. We'll do one more question. I know we kind of talked about this earlier with Ivy. Trutella asked, how is defensive focus if Joe Harris and Amude is playing so many minutes, man? I don't have all the answers. I really don't. I don't know.
Dude, don't worry. I got all the answers. I got this. This is an easy one. It doesn't make sense.
It does.
No, I'm just kidding. I think just when you're talking about a bench unit, it is that it's obviously not your best five. It's obviously not the lineup that theoretically is winning you the game. I think just in general, bench units are more offensive focused. It's different if Joe's playing down the stretch in a close game when we're trying to clamp up. But even though you do need a shooting in some points. But no, I think it's a different conversation when you're comparing bench to the starting unit and the guys playing 25 plus a night.
Yeah, like we've talked about this probably the last 2 weeks on this podcast of the message not being consistent, and it's just it's kind of targeting certain players like
Jaden Ivey.
Yeah. Like, but we kind of talked about it, like he's being harder on Ivy because he sees more potential. You're playing Joe Harris right now because That's one of your better shooters. There's no spacing. Now, obviously, Joe Harris is not a lockdown defender. I'm being nice. He's average. He's an average defender. He's passable.
He's a defender of below average capacity.
So a traffic cone.
Some might say. He's better than a traffic cone, but I don't know that he's average.
Yeah, like
he's close. I'm messing with you.
Yeah, I don't really have an answer, and I don't really think even media members, like when you ask them, they don't really have an answer. Even though they try to ask Monty questions about like, why are you starting Killian? Why didn't you complain about fouls? Like, he's not going to give you the answer you want to hear.
Yeah, I mean, and also it's like Joe's playing 14 minutes a game right now. You don't need to preach. The thing is also like Joe's a vet. Like you bring him in because A, you're a little shorthanded, and B, you know what you're going to get out of him, which is shooting, which hopefully you surround him with enough defense. But yeah, I think it's a different conversation when you're talking about bench players playing 14 a night compared to your starters.
Oh, 100%. Like I think that the message isn't consistent, obviously, but like I think the Pistons have so much guard depth. I think that may be a reason why he's able to say, well, I can play Killian, I could play Sasser, I can play Burks, I can play Morris when he comes back. With Harris, he's kind of playing at that small forward position. You have Asar Thompson, you have Stanley Amude, and you have Joe Harris.
Right.
Like, pick your poison. They each can do different things. I think Joe Harris, to me, offensively, is their best weapon. Amude he has potential, but I just don't think he's had enough NBA reps to get consistent minutes. Like, they'll throw him out there for maybe a minute or two if someone's gassed, but I don't think he's ready. And I think that's why you see so much Joe Harris minutes, is because he's a vet and he provides spacing and 3-point shooting at the end of the day.
Agreed. But also at the end of the day, Ivy needs to be playing more than 20 minutes a game.
Yeah. It really
on
does.
The topic, yeah.
It really does, man. Like, if Monte Morris comes back and he's still getting 25 minutes a game, like, I think I'm just gonna mute the word Killian Hayes on Twitter.
It's like, probably the safe option, yeah.
Literally, like I can't take it sometimes. Like some fans on Twitter, I don't actually believe have been to a Pistons game.
It's kind of crazy to me that like Pistons Twitter is big enough where there's enough trolls who don't actually know what they're saying. This isn't a generalization. This isn't like all Pistons Twitter. There's just like there's enough accounts on there where I could say that, where it's like, yeah, you've never watched a game. Like, you look at the box score and like, yeah, like Killian's numbers generally don't look amazing. Don't get me wrong. He's had stretches. He's really had one stretch in his career. And it was a great stretch. And then he went to France and it all went away. But but yeah, I think muting the word Killian works. I mean, I also, I don't know. Like I said, like, he's been solid, but I completely understand not wanting him in the starting lineup. I don't want him in the starting lineup, and I'm a big Killian guy.
Yeah. I thought he was going to be just that third backup point guard just in case of an injury, and I was right.
Once we got Monte Morris and literally I was like figuring out where we're trading him. And didn't happen, and now he's starting too right now.
Yeah, I mean, we could probably talk about Killian for like 3 hours straight, and it wouldn't be in a positive way, because he hasn't really done anything positive in 4 years, outside of the dunk tonight, which I thought he like freaking broke his tailbone. Because
dude, me too.
That was a nasty fall.
Yeah, I love that wasn't a flagrant, which I don't think it was, but they called Duran's flagrant, both of them, when he got pushed into KD. But that's the refs are a conversation.
Did you see that guy's teeth like blow out of the side of his mouth?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Duran's elbow? Yeah, he elbowed him so hard the guy lost a couple teeth.
I figured that's why he was going back to the locker room holding his mouth.
It's like, man, you're playing the wrong sport, JD. You need to be like a lineman.
Honestly, especially Stu needs to be a lineman. I would not want to get elbowed by either of them.
No, like,
I'm glad they're on our team.
Like, I met Dwayne Casey maybe 2 years ago, and that man shook my hand. He's strong as F. Like, he hurt my hand, shaking. I was like, damn, man. And like, Stu did the same thing, and I was like, my hand hurts. Stop.
That's so rough. Yeah. No, but it'll be interesting to see if Stu, because I think for the most part he's actually like he's surprised me how good he's looked next to Duran in that lineup. I'm like very curious to see if it looks good with Boyan back, basically, or Sasser or Morris in the starting lineup right now.
I think it has a lot to do with Duran and how smart he is, because you never see them in the paint at the same time.
Right.
So it's not like when we had like Josh Smith, Craig Monroe, and Andre Drummond, and they're all in the paint, and you're like,
I muted
where do I go? Yeah, I think Duran just makes it work because he's just such a smart basketball player, and he knows how to get out of the lane and just kind of let Stu do his thing in the post.
Yeah, agreed. And I do like that Stu is taking advantage of mismatches more this year. Tonight, for the first time this season, I saw him take a contested three, which I was very excited about because I think like his numbers look good, but he's been very hesitant if anybody's closing out in any way. And I think for him to actually space the floor properly with Cade, he's got to do what he did today. Take a corner three where someone's closing out, he hit it, move on. And now people are like, oh, like he's actually going to take that shot.
Yeah. Well, I lied. We'll do one more question, then we can wrap this up.
Let's do it.
Excellent question. Do you think the Pistons move on from Marvin Bagley anytime soon? Or do you think they'll hang on to him for the foreseeable future?
I kind of think okay, here's the thing with Bagley is when he plays, as we've seen, especially this season, and since he's been in Detroit and Sacramento, he's a good player when he plays. It's just no one can trust him to play more than 50 games a year, which is where you run into the issue. I mean, if he's playing well, coming up to that December 15th deadline, coming up to the trade deadline, depending on how things are going, maybe he has some trade value 1 year left on his contract where maybe that happens, or you just ride it out and he's an expiring deal next year. He's providing you points off the bench. I don't really know. It was puzzling, the contract in the first place. Just the numbers and like who are you bidding against? But short answer, I think they hold on to him.
Yeah, I think when we saw the contract, we're like, wow, $12 million, that's a lot. But you kind of look at what players got paid this summer, and the contract looks relatively cheap. So you kind of have to tip your cap to the Pistons front office and whoever does their cap space, because they probably saw that the cap was going up, and what you're getting for Bagley is, relatively like mid-level.
I think my issue wasn't the number, it was the years. I never like a third guaranteed year at that stage of the rebuild, but I think it's fine at this point if he could stay healthy, which is the if.
Yeah, I think with him, I'm good like 15, 20 minutes a game.
Yeah,
I think that's
for sure.
That's where he thrives. I think if you try to play him in those long minutes, like 25, 30 minutes a game, I think that's where he gets worn out, and that's how he gets injured.
Yeah.
Because all his injuries this year, or not only like last year, they were just freak injuries, like someone stepping on his foot. It's never been like a long-term injury.
Right.
But I think as like a backup power forward or center, I'm fine with it. For sure. To answer this guy's question, I don't really know what the value for Marvin Bagley is, because the Kings traded him for a second-round pick.
Right.
And it was like I don't know, like a 5-6 team trade that they got Bagley for. So I think they might just hold on to him because they do need that depth, backing someone up, because they, outside of him, all they really have is James Wiseman. And we saw James Wiseman last week, and he had 3 fouls in 2 minutes. So I just don't think he's ready to contribute under Monty Williams.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think unless Wiseman, gets an opportunity coming up and looks good, I think, you got to bank on Bagley. It might be one of those things where like Bagley misses a couple games, hopefully nothing serious. Hopefully it doesn't even happen. Yeah. And then Wiseman steps in and you're like, okay, like maybe he could actually hold down the backup big spot for 10, 15 minutes a night. You stagger Stu and Duran, play small a little bit. Maybe that works out and you're like, okay, we can get off of Bagley. But yeah, I think depth-wise at this point, you're much better off keeping Bagley than, rolling with Wiseman, who I think has looked okay in stretches. But I just think it sucks for him, because I think it really could be a rep thing. But, And I don't like judging off the one opportunity he's had this year, which he very clearly looked terrible.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, it's very clear. It's been very clear that Bagley was going to win that backup spot, and I cannot believe there were people last year telling me that Wiseman is starting. He's the starting center next year. I'm like, do you guys understand what's going on right now? Like, we're seeing what we got with him. Duren's coming back from injury. That's why Wiseman is starting over him at the moment. But I can't believe people really thought Wiseman was going to come into the year as the starting center.
It's so much of like Warriors Twitter and the Wiseman stands that come with it. Like, like when we trade for a player, a lot of fans from, like, let's say it was James Wiseman last year. You got a bunch of Golden State Warriors fans, James Wiseman stands saying like, this is his team now. He's going to be the starting center.
Right.
Duren's going to be coming off the bench. They're going to trade back. That was never the case. I thought it was a lottery ticket, and the Pistons didn't win.
Yeah.
Like, to me, like it was a high recruited second overall pick that just didn't pan out. And obviously he's been injured a lot and he hasn't gotten the reps, but even out there, he just kind of seems confused where he needs to be at times. And maybe that's his playing time. But I think they keep Bagley and they move on from Wiseman. If I had to make a guess, they move on from Wiseman this year.
You have more insight into this because you follow the G League more than I do. Would you see a scenario, especially with the Crews right there, where get him some reps there in the meantime if he's not going to be playing up, or is that not going to work with him?
I mean, it could work. Like their center depth last year was absolutely insane. Like, they had guys that I could argue should have made the NBA. They traded for a guy that was averaging 26 and 13 and 2 blocks. And I was just like, how is this guy not in the NBA? He reminded me a lot of Christian Wood. I was just like, okay. They trade him. They don't bring him back, but their only center right now, I believe, is Jalen Johnson, who's from here. He's from the Detroit area. But yeah, you could definitely see Wiseman in the G League this year on assignment because, the G League, I think their season starts next week, I believe.
Right.
So they're going to start having more games this year. I could see it, and I would like it for the reps because they've completely revamped their roster. They got a brand new head coach.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's Nate McMillan's son who's going to be coaching the G League. So, I mean, there's a lot to like on that roster. I think the only thing where they got worse was point guard because Xavier Simpson's going to be the full-time point guard there.
My question is, like, why don't they utilize the G League team more? Like, they moved downtown, so they're right there. Like, I feel like we haven't seen any sort of, like, practice with, the Pistons, go play a game with the Crews, come back the next day. Like, especially for, like, someone like Wiseman, where it's just, like, he's not playing. Theoretically, he just needs reps and some more, more than just reps. But reps are going to help a lot in theory. So I don't know.
Yeah, like I've actually asked the GM there that too. And they say it's not so much like when you look at hockey, when they call it the AHL instead of the G League, but when they have their development system, they have guys that they're trying to develop and they play meaningful minutes. And it's very similar to like what maybe the Red Wings run. With the Pistons last year, it was very similar to what Dwayne Casey was running. And it's probably going to be very similar to what Monty Williams runs in Detroit. But I think the reason why they don't really utilize the G League, to your question, is because the players down there, I don't really think could make an impact on this roster. Like Stanley Amude came off the bench last year.
Right.
He could have started, but he came off the bench and he was like a leader. I don't really think there's a player on that roster. Maybe Malcolm Cazalan got some minutes.
Right.
Jared Rhoden, to me, I've never really been impressed with them. Like, he puts up monster numbers in the G League and he comes to the NBA and he just seems like he doesn't care.
Right.
It's just they need to do a better job with the two ways, in my opinion. Like, actually sign two-way guys. That's just my thing.
Buddy Boeheim.
Oh god.
Totally agree. Bring Buddy back.
Yeah, I mean, he's still on the roster. He's still in the G League.
Didn't they? Oh, the G League. Yeah. I was like,
no,
the Pistons? Yeah.
No, they signed him. He's still on the G League roster, but like to your question, they just don't sign guys that they could go out and sign. Like Hamidou Diallo is going to be on, I think, the Washington Wizards G League team, which is
I saw that.
Absolutely wild to me. Like they have a guy.
Hami's a player, man. Like it's tricky because the rest of the lineup needs to be able to shoot around him, and maybe he isn't worth being the one player who can't really shoot, but he should be in the NBA.
Yeah. I'm not reading that question. Holy shit. You guys are wild. I'm not answering that. I'm not trying to get canceled. Oh my god. Because I know he watches, and he'll be really pissed if I put that on the screen.
Fine, I won't read it out loud.
You guys need to chill. But do you have anything you're working on right now, or
honestly, just I was gonna start the podcast back up. I probably still will and should. It's just, I credit to everybody who does, you and everybody else in the Pistons community who podcast through all this. It's just, it's so hard for me to just get up and record it when interest is waning and the team's losing as it has been for 15 years at this point. Like, man, we deserve a winner. But yeah, podcast will probably be back. Still as active on Twitter as always. That's all I got.
Well, we do have your Twitter link in the description for you guys that want to go follow Pistons Thoughts. Like I said, probably the most positive Piston fan on Twitter. That I've been following your shit like way before like I started like Pistons Talk.
Yeah,
probably like 5-6 years ago when I just had like the burner Twitter. I was like, man, this guy is really fucking positive. What the hell?
Man, I accidentally convinced people we're going to be better than we are sometimes. So that's my bad.
I do it every year. I was with you on the TJ Warren train for years, but never happened.
Hey, if we got TJ, would have been a different season. You saw what he did in the bubble.
Man, he would have been nice. But
that broke my heart though. Jeff Bauer did us dirty.
Yeah, he really did, man. He really did. It's fun. I actually ran into him at the airport not too long ago.
Interesting. Well, let him know if you ever see him again that I'm still upset he gave TJ to somebody else.
If I ever do see him. But want to thank everyone watching today's podcast without Lance. Maybe he'll be back next week. I'm not sure. He said he was on vacation, but want to thank you for joining us today. It was a lot of fun. Definitely have to do this again. I'm sure Lance would definitely want to ask you way more questions than I did. But appreciate you guys watching tonight. We'll see you guys next Sunday, same time. Later, guys.
Appreciate you.